right, onward with the show. So I wanted to speak also about what a cousin is. I've never stood here, have I? Okay, so not what a cousin is, stories I have about cousins through my mother's sisters, like same father and mother, because my grandfather, after my grandmother passed away, he remarried. And I have aunts and an uncle of a different mother than my grandmother. So anyways, I wanted to talk specifically about, I have 4 cousins who live in the Middle East, and they have a relatively large family, and some stories I have, because I'm really obsessive, and fanatical and maniacal about the 10 Commandments, and I believe thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. So I actually have this theory: only your mother and father, if you're a human male adult as I am, only your father and mother and wife and yourself are actual blood to you. Even your children are as water, and the rest are as water. But I used to say family, and I used to say disproportionately I guess cousin and aunt, uncle, are different terms. But I consider cousins like relatives, like very, very distant relatives. Never actually very close. So I have 4 cousins, 2 female and 2 male. All won't have been my age or younger, so all 4 are older than I am. And my of the 4, the firstborn is a female cousin, and she her oldest son, she has 3 sons, and actually sorry to those individuals to bring them up, but if I understand correctly, 2 of her sons are approximately 6'5" in terms of height, and I can forget how tall that is in centimeters. I guess 196 or something. And then she has a son also, the youngest is 206 centimeters, or I'm not sure, 6'9", 6'10", something of the sort. So yeah, I'm only just under 6'2", but so anyways, I have some stories which I thought were cool, very enjoyable, and actually fun to listen to. Possibly not for you, but they may have meaning at a very high level to me. Even though those individuals are only relatives, they're just relatives. So the human on earth who, beginning with number 1, okay, so number 1 of the cousins, and she is the older of the 4. The actual human on earth, which had me understand recently, actually, and I'm in my late 30s, what is happening with the Jews since the Holocaust, and what's happening with Israel and the Jews, at a level that I think the argument was really great. I hope, if I understand, she's spoken through by what God allows. But she said, in a sense, in a way I understood, stopping the Jews in terms of making Israel expand is a necessary thing for religious purposes. Though I disagree that at the moment the Jews have to accept Virgin Mary, and then Jesus. Jesus and Virgin Mary are of the Jews to begin with, and they were Israelites. But so I came to the conclusion of an Exodus 2, different than Ham genome and Egypt, though there's the second issue with black Ham genome of West Africa descent, which is repeating, but very higher level, much higher level than the Egyptians. with the use of nuclei and physical development of the mind and hands to enslave Shia, for instance, and the Jews possibly, but through control of the women disproportionately. But there's an Exodus 2 out of Japheth. I mean, an Exodus 2, though a first Exodus out of Japheth, disproportionately leaning on the Holocaust and the return of the Jews to disproportionately, in no sense entirely, but disproportionately to having a nation physically, like a nation state, which they have recourse to. And they can count certain realities, which I discussed in a previous video, to be the case. So in Europe, the Jews disproportionately didn't have a nation state under their control, and for instance, the Nazis under Adolf Hitler did, or several nations, or an evil empire. There are reasons for certain words, but I'm just going through very quickly, and I have to give a higher amount of thought to the issue. But so there's an Exodus 2, and there's a need to control the bloodshed. So thou shalt not kill. There's a need to assist the Jews to have recourse to the Ten Commandments and also the seven deadly sins being removed. The sin of, for instance, wrath, lust, greed, whatever the issue may be. In my case, gluttony seems to be the case. I discussed it in a different video, isn't the case. Will actually have been a different reality. But so disproportionately to not kill needs to be assisted to the Jews on the part of Shem genome. And this is now getting very, very genocidal and deadly and lethal in the case of the US and Israeli war versus Iran. And this is very bad for the entire left side of the map, at where the Jews disproportionately are at the moment in Israel to the left. This is very bad. Though the left side of the map, the West, is no understanding the reality quickly. They're gonna need like 4,000 years at this rate. So anyways, the story. She tells me essentially what I understand later to be, like I understand after, she mentions earlier, there's a need to stop and control what Exodus 2 is, created by, I believe in 1948 by Englishmen, United Kingdom, and the allowance of like Israel, but there's to be a cessation eventually. This is how I understood this, but there's to be a cessation of violence, there's to be peace. And there are too many different arguments as to what the reality is. It's very simple, not simple to put into action and to do, though simple as a fact, as a factually true reality. Actually, no human in the Middle East should kill, nor should any human be killed. Okay, this would essentially be an enormous step toward peace. So the number would be exactly 0, okay, which are killed or killed. Also, stop saying Egypt is in the Middle East. Stop. Egypt is Ham genome controlled and in Africa, the continent of Africa. The Middle East is in Asia, okay? So we are Asians. Though, of course, Israel in the Bible is eventually going to expand into somewhat to like the Nile River, somewhat barely into Africa, but at the moment isn't and hasn't historically been. And if you look up the Jews' ancestry, if I understand correctly, they are what would have been Iraqi, Babylonian. They're from around the Fertile Crescent area. I believe Ur of Chaldees is where Abraham is of. And what's the name? Nasiriyah in Iraq is the closest city we have at the moment, like town we have at the moment to where he is of. So yes, the Jews are Middle Eastern. They're different than Iraqi, but God's chosen people are specifically God's people. And we are actually never allowed to have them as a possession. For instance, we already understand this at the latest, let's say now, though we understand this, for instance, with when we see the Jews in Egypt. For example, the Jews are never to be held as slave. Okay? And I would argue no human should ever be held as slave in any instance. But it's not like, okay, so like Ham Genome took slave, so Ham Genome should be made slave, and then Ham Genome enslave I, no. But the Ten Commandments are different in a sense, because there's more to the Ten Commandments. I'm not getting through every single commandment relating to neighbor and what neighbor may possess, okay? But so anyways, so yes, and I remember this story or this explanation by my cousin in the Middle East. Okay, and then I have a different explanation and story about a different cousin, the second cousin in order, so cousin two, excuse me, too much burping. Cousin two, she is the second cousin in order of age. I guess I'm not intending to, but I am going in order of age. And I used to bite my nails. So I guess you can see I clip my nails now. I hope you can tell. I have some like skin issue, which I think is diabetes, but the doctors continue to say is like an eczema type condition, which I have to put cream on. Sorry, I don't mean to be gross, but I feel like I'm like an afflicted human, like, oh, save me, So yeah, so I clip my nails at the moment, but I used to bite my nails since I was a child. And I used to enjoy to bite my nails, and I wouldn't usually swallow the nail. I would put the nails in between my teeth, like into the gums and into the teeth, and I would just move my tongue around and try to like move the nail in and out. It's like weird, just to occupy my mind, and very, very weird scenario to admit. But so I used to bite my fingernails, and the first individual who I felt, it's not the word pity, possibly ashamed, but I feel had a sense of love to remove this issue from me is my second cousin in order of the four of them who are born from the same aunt of the sister of my mother, aunt. So she sighed. I remember her sigh, and when I heard her sigh, this was physically the beginning, no lie. Because so I should mention this. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this. I was born in the USA. I am of the USA. I went to the Middle East once, I believe, when I was 3 years old, and I had my birthday there, and I turned 4. And then I didn't return to the Middle East. I went to Europe, though I didn't return to the Middle East until I was in my, after UCLA, like after I graduated from university and got my bachelor's degree. And I remember the age, so I should tell you, I was age 23 when I finally went to the Middle East, because I don't have a good memory, and I hadn't understood. So I only had a living grandmother of my grandparents, a single living grandmother. And I have a very extremely large family, especially on my mother's side, and my father's side, they were 7, but a single of them passed away while an infant. So there's 6. So the extended family on my father's side, the extended I shouldn't say family, relatives, sorry. The extended relatives are also many humans. Yes, so what's the point I bring this up? So I hadn't seen and I hadn't felt what physically is a grandparent, what physically is a cousin, because I don't have any siblings either. So I only had my father and my mother, and around 23, I had relationships to women, but I hadn't been I didn't have a wife, for instance, and I wasn't thinking to then. So I only had disproportionate relationship to my father and my mother, and to who I am as an individual. And I was like generally a lonely individual. But when I saw my relatives, for some reason, the sigh my cousin had, where she felt bad for me, is how I guess I would say it. How I would say this. This is when I didn't immediately never bite my nails again. Like, I occasionally begin to bite my nails. I haven't for like many months now, but possibly like over a year. But if even I do begin to bite my nails, I stop like within like maybe a week or so. And this began literally with her, with my cousin. So yes, okay, my cousin 3 in order. Okay, so cousin 3, he is the older male cousin, but he's the third born. And so the story I have many stories about this cousin, because this cousin, so I had begun approaching like women, I would say girls, because I was like in my early 20s, but I had begun approaching women earlier than I met him when I was 23, but I didn't really really have, like, I still had severe social anxiety, and I was like anxious and scared and worried. But he was like forcing me when I had gone to the Middle East to like approach women. And I went several trips to the Middle East. I'm just talking about the first. But the first trip I was like angry, and I had like, I had a lot wasn't going well in between when I graduated from UCLA, and yeah, so it's been 14 years later and a lot hasn't gone well. But so this isn't the exact story I want to tell, but he was like forcing me to like approach women there. And it got to the point where the actual like approaching part was like easier. So like I'm familiar with like pickup artist stuff from when I was in like my late teens, and I guess my early 20s is when I'm familiar with this. But and I'm familiar with like different individuals and different variations, varying levels, not variations, varying levels of success. But I'm also of the USA, and like I realized this like after, the USA is like males of the USA in like anywhere I've been on earth are like popular just for being a male. Like the like a Shia or like a Middle Eastern guy as myself is like of like the lowest popularity with women, but just being born of like the USA, it's like compared, not when you're, so never when you're in the USA, which is really funny to me. But when you leave the USA, it's like women think you are like the most popular bully who can like, I guess, beat up at the very least with mind and hands, or like words with the mouth, can like beat up like any male. And it's like taking, okay, despite what they may say, despite what the women may say, but it does take this form. Like the USA, being of the USA is like, I think the most popular you can get in terms of what nation you're of, in terms of birth. And like, it's like the accent, like humans may think like, oh, like an Englishman accent is like really great. I'm sure, but like as a rule, our accent, like when we're actually traveling, never in the USA. The USA, the women could care less, couldn't care less, or like will never have cared less, I guess. But it's like popular, like I've only been to Europe and Asia aside of the USA and North America, but it's like unbelievable when we speak. So anyways, so this cousin got me to start speaking, but the story is, my mother and father, or like who I am as an individual, or like any individuals I knew, or even women, with my, let's say, limited experience by when I was 23, never anyone could get me to understand. I had long hair at a certain point, like to my shoulders, and I like couldn't understand how to like get an individual to like cut my hair. Like I don't have hair like well now at this instance, but like my hair is bad is what I'm saying. But I had hair until I started to shave my head in the late 20s, when I was in my late 20s, and when I stopped shaving my head, I had like already been balding. So I'm not sure. Like I stopped shaving when I was like 34, like my mid 30s. So I'm not sure when I started balding, but I had hair. It was like thinning a little bit in my late 20s. But so the first individual who ever took me anywhere where I enjoyed the haircut and I looked better. So like I would put my hair like back, like, okay, possibly like 1940s style, but better than like what I had been, where it's like, you know, like super nerd style, was this cousin. And he took me to the place, and this was also the first like razor, like actual razor where they put the razor on the thing and they, you know, cut with the razor, they edge it up with the razor. I had never gotten this type of haircut, and it was like the best haircut I ever had. And I guess, you know, this is what happens. But the joke's on me, because they in the barber actually put on television, he put on like pornography, like straight pornography, and he made a joke. I'll leave the joke out, but it's I guess it's relative to, once you get this type of haircut, you're never gonna go return again to any other haircut. And the joke's on him also, on this individual, the barber, because I don't have hair, which is like good enough to get that type of haircut. But you know, I'm talking like shaved with a razor, lined up with a razor. My hair was like, I was just like blown away. I was like sort of like ashamed or embarrassed at first, but then I finally had hair. You know what I mean? So yeah, so this was this cousin specifically who did this. And yeah, so okay, so his younger brother, the three of their younger brother, the youngest, who's also older than I am, fourth cousin, cousin four. Okay, so cousin four, when I was 23 and I went to the Middle East, he used to drive a motorcycle, right? And it's not like those like, I don't know what they are, like Honda or Suzuki. They look a little, they're like Middle Eastern motorcycles, if you can imagine, because it's the Middle East. And it's like what, like a decade and a half ago, almost 14 years later. So he had a motorcycle. I tried to drive the motorcycle. He started speaking to me. He started like talking to me and helping me to drive. And I couldn't listen to him and like understand I'm still driving. And I almost drove the motorcycle into a ditch in the middle of town, like a man-made ditch that they have. But I didn't, luckily. But so the actual story is, the capital of the province I was in is like, I think like 30 minutes from, if you're going like highway speed. So it's like 30 minutes from the what is it called? The town my mother is like approximately born in. She's like of. And it's 30 minutes essentially because it's like mountains are on the side of the road, and then you can even see cars which have fell down the side of, like, because it's like the mountain is here and then there's like the road and it's like winding around like next to the mountain, and then there's like a downward slope also, and then there's like a car or two in the path, or there was then, which had fallen there. I hope the humans have like lived after. I'm not sure, because it's like really steep. So he, I wasn't thinking properly. I don't think accurately I understood what was happening, but I asked him to take me on the motorcycle, and in miles per hour, I forget. And he's his older brother I get into arguments with like repeatedly, but the younger brother, no, because the younger brother has like a temper compared to the older brother. And so what happened is, I was sitting on the back of the motorcycle. I had never ridden on a motorcycle since my father had a motorcycle in the USA when I was like, I guess like a toddler or so. I guess this is when, or like past infant, you know, but I hadn't ever been on a motorcycle, whether I was driving or a different individual was. And so he drove, and in miles an hour, I guess he was going like 40, 50, 60, something of the sort, like on this like winding, like this like side of the mountain, and then the other side is like drops down like I don't know, like 30 feet, something like this. And he's like going like 40, 50 or 60. And I realized this was like the first instance in my life. I realized he probably thought I'm not fully there or understanding what's happening. And this was like the first instance in my life. I was like, I guess different than a roller coaster, but I was like afraid I'm gonna like literally possibly die. So I like, he couldn't hear me anyways, but like, this is the first instance I like shut my mouth, like in real life, no joke, in like a metaphorical sense, in analogy, in real life, like whatever, because it's like, if you could see the side of like the mountain in real, like in like, as like a living organism on the back of a motorcycle, and how fast he was going. And they were like talking about at different instances how like an uncle I have, he had done the trip in like 24 minutes in like a car, or something of the sort, like 23 minutes in a car, like just like crazy stuff. But I got there, I got to the capital where the rest of my relatives are, and yeah, and I remember he put because it started like raining too. It started like drizzling, rain, you know, and like the Middle East is like arid, so it like freaks me out even more. And we got there and he was like, I guess he was angry or messing with me. I'm not sure which it was, but his gloves that he had put on were like wet, and he like rubbed the gloves on my face and he was like, you see, my gloves are wet and I got you here, or something like this. And anyways, so very exciting, very terrifying. I was afraid. I'm not like a scaredy cat, but despite what you may think, but he was going like really fast, and it's not like a straight like highway. And you're gonna say like, okay, well, you're gonna talk about the German Autobahn. Okay, my uncle has driven on the German Autobahn, and I've been a passenger when he has. I understand there's no speed limit, but it's a difference when you're like on the side of a mountain going like 50 or 40 or 60 or whatever it was, 60 miles an hour. And I wish I would have memorized kilometers per hour. I just got temperature between Fahrenheit and centigrade. But yeah, so really, really crazy story. And I just thought I would make this video about these 4 interesting stories I had, where like I believe in the 10 commandments. So I believe thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. And I believe heterosexuality to be correct and allowed, actually. So I believe in having wife, and I believe to never like suicide or like to kill. I never believe to kill, suicide, and I try to not be evil, to never be evil. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Of course I'm human, but 100% human. So yeah, but those four stories were like really interesting. I have like different stories which I remember, even though my memory is bad. I have like many different stories of several of my relatives, but I guess it's the case. My mother has passed away for approaching a year now, the 1-year anniversary of her passing, though I don't want to make a graven image. I'm not like celebrating her like passing, just her like memory. Yeah, so I have a very interesting mother's side of the family, and mother's side of my relatives. And I soon shall be visiting my father's side in Europe. So just wanted to bring this up, and thank you very much for listening. I hope this was interesting to hear. Bye-bye.